I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we can catch up anybody that hasn't shown up yet. There's a lot of material, but there really isn't. That's why I call this practical measuring. It's for the agent out in the field, and I'm not going to try to share my screens and stuff here because I'll just get lost. So let me just get started with saying that all my links are broken to the from the last time I taught the class, because both LBAR and CREC have redone their websites. I spent a half a day searching on both sites and couldn't find what I taught the class to last time. But no, this is what we're supposed to measure to. Which asks the question, why do we need to measure a property? First, because we're professional. That means we're going to be honest, we're going to be knowledgeable, and we're going to be ethical. We're also going to be accurate. Now, we're not measuring professionals, although Christy seems to think I am. But we're expected to have the knowledge and the ability to accurately measure and report to a standard. And that standard is ANSI ANSI Z765 2003, which is the huge update they had in 2003. They did another update in 2013, and they're doing another update last year, which because of the pandemic hasn't been, as far as I know, hasn't been approved yet, but they made some minor changes, but there's some important changes. If you have a property that you're measuring, or that you have listed, or that your folks are buying, your buyers are buying, that have particular features. So CREC has approved or has acknowledged the standard. KAR has approved it. At one point, 2 years ago, LBAR had a policy for it. It's in the contents page, but it doesn't show the actual policy now. It's missing in the policy, MLS policy. So I'm going to work on getting that taken care of. Now, what we're going to measure to, and let me see if I can do this. This is my first time hosting, so please be patient with me. Anyone that needs the standard, I can email it to them. It's like 17 pages, of which 12 are actually the standard. And stop me anytime you have questions, please. There's only a few things that you need to measure a house. Let's see where I am here. See everyone's smiling face. There we go. So I can make sure I'm showing things right. Pencil. Straight edge. Piece of graph paper, which ends up starting out like this, where you're measuring the house and you're trying to walk around with a pen or a pencil and two measuring tapes, and trying to hook onto the house and walk around plants and decks and everything else. Eventually you get it to this, which is just all your measurements put down on graph paper, and you hope all the lines intersect. And we'll talk about responsibility and liability, et cetera, as we're going along. Two things I want to talk about since I showed the measuring tapes. This one is okay. It's 100 foot. You need that to measure the exterior of the house. Any particular one that works for you, just having the little grippy fingers that will grab the side of siding or anything like that, so you can walk around and do this by yourself and not have to have an extra set of hands. Because usually what happens, you forget your measurement when you're talking to whoever has the extra set of hands, and you forget about what your measurement was. Experience. 25 foot tape. This is not my preferred, but it's an okay one. You want a wide 25 foot tape that you can string out across openings of which they have no support. The Stanley Fat Max is a really good one. I left my last one somewhere and just haven't replaced it yet. So that's your basics, that and this knowledge and knowledge of the standard. So I'm going to go through the new one. Please ask questions. Please ask questions, because a lot of these things are relevant. situations that you will encounter. Now, another reason that we also measure a house ourselves is, one, the PVA is wrong. 99% of the time, it's not accurate. They usually are provided plans by the builder upon the building permit process, and they take their measurements from that or historical PVA records. So they don't get changed unless we ask them to change them. David is pretty good about doing that when the time comes and when you need it, along with changing pricing and your assessment amount when it's justified if you can show comps, but primarily they are wrong. But I always advise printing out, if you know in advance and it's not a brand new home, of course, you'll have plans. But printing out, I've got it here somewhere, the PVA base area of the home you're going to measure, because it is helpful, it is useful. Where I have it here somewhere. You guys have looked it up. You know what it looks like. It looks something like this. It'll give approximate measurements. They're all rounded to the nearest foot, but they're never accurate. When you get your appraisal, surprise, after either your listing has been bought for 2 to 3 to 4 weeks and the appraiser comes by, you'll get an accurate measurement because they do use the standard. They do this several times every day. They'll either have a laser that they've got hooked in. Hey, Susie. Either have a laser they have hooked in and know how to use, which is difficult to use that laser measuring device outside, or they'll have a surveyor's roller that they'll roll around on the ground and use, or both, or any combination, however they feel comfortable. I still use the manual method because it's just easier to get around decks and bushes and that type of thing. But that printout is convenient to at least have a base of knowing what you're going to do for the base area. The upstairs portions, they're like trying to read Greek to me, but it's a good base to start with. So let's go about, we're going to go through the standard really quick, and then we'll go back for highlights. If you don't have it in front of you, again, that's why I'm going to hit the highlights. You need to know the difference between an attached single-family house and a detached single-family house. And of course, attached, we're talking about duplexes, townhomes, row houses, where the ownership can be different, and condos as well. The ownership can be different within the envelope of the entire structure, as opposed to a single-family detached where there's always airspace all the way around the house. Finished area, and they've added something to this that really doesn't, it doesn't affect us here in Kentucky much, but if you're going somewhere else, it may. I'm talking about enclosed area that's suitable for year-round user. Now it's based on location. So in places where it's really warm, like South Texas, in Florida in most places, Hawaii, where outdoor space and indoor space kind of blend together, and there may not be walls completely surrounding them, or there may be openings where normally there would be windows here, there would not be. So they're allowing for that now. So that here it's not going to matter, but I just want to interject that because it is a change. Secondly, a garage, and a garage is when it's built and it's intended to store a vehicle, and it's going to be important later on. Levels of a house. Here in Kentucky, we do have some sunken living rooms and that type of thing. And as long as they're within 2 feet of what we consider the main level of the floor, it's considered the same level. Let's see here. All right. I don't like this sometimes, but sometimes this calculation method, you have to extrapolate because you don't have access to portions of the house, whether it be a locked space. It could be you're doing a BPO for a bank and there's nobody home or they won't let you in, where you have to decide how big the house is. And that's again with the PVA. If you can get the outside of the house measured and kind of extrapolate. I like to take pictures when I'm walking around each side of the house so I can see where setbacks are. Say for the second floor, we have a lot of those around here. It's something to remember, that we're trying to be as accurate as possible, and as long as we disclose that we didn't have access to certain parts of the interior parts of the house to measure, that's okay. All right, let's see here. Something that I get asked a lot, especially when I submit square footage to a listing agent, is they're wondering about stairs. You can't count stairs on both levels. It's only one floor. And the general rule is you count the stairs to the level that you're going down to. We have a lot of split foyers like that as well. So that square footage counts for the basement, but the opening shows a hole on the first floor. And a lot of listing agents don't like that, because generally that first floor or the main floor on a split foyer house, main floor on a split foyer house is the only thing above grade. So you're actually adding to the below grade. But that's the general rule. Ceiling heights. We have a lot of houses here in Lexington and the surrounding area that are 1.5 stories, the Cape Cod style. The thing to remember about the Cape Cod style houses is that the ceiling height has to be a minimum of 7 feet. So if in that entire room, if you don't have 7 feet anywhere, we get to what Christy was describing as conforming and non-conforming. So it's actually still finished space, but it's finished non-conforming. And I can go over any of this when we get back toward the end. You ask me a lot of questions. In a lot of the older houses, the knee wall on the outside of that second story is only 4 feet high. The standard requires 5 feet of height to make it conforming finished. So what you have to do on the 4-foot side is you have to pull your tape across the ceiling with a 5-foot level until you can plumb bob it till it's 5 feet high. That area that's usually it's about 18 inches. 18 inches to the wall on both sides is then finished but non-conforming. You're supposed to separate that out. Newer homes, they know the standard. They build them to a minimum of 5 feet high on most of the newer houses I've found. Let's see what else here. All right, chimneys, bay windows, that type of thing. The standard calls for an interior chimney, which means the outside wall is generally flush with the outside of the chimney. That fireplace then and chimney is included in the square footage at floor level. If you have an outside chase, which is preferred by most homeowners, that way it doesn't take up floor space in the house. It actually pushes the chimney outside of the vertical wall. In that case, you do not count the chimney as part of the floor space. Same thing with a bay window or a bump out. As long as the bump out goes to the level of the floor, you count it. If it's just a window, it may be a window seat type of situation, or in a kitchen where it's just bumped out above the kitchen counter, you do not count that extra bump out as square footage. Something I talked about garages earlier. And this is where you have to use your judgment. And again, that's why we call it practical measuring. You're supposed to count the envelope of the house in the finished heated square footage. Sometimes the garage is vertically separated from the base area of the house. Sometimes it's pushed in a little bit or a lot, and sometimes it's totally enclosed within the base of the house. Generally, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to measure the outside envelope of the structure, including the garage. Then we're going to go back in and back out the garage as unfinished area as garage space. But you measure the outside wall of the interior space, which means you open the garage door, you measure your outside envelope, you take a tape to the back wall, bring it all the way out to the finished area where vinyl or brick, and that's your depth. So it's the framing, the drywall, and the paint basically into the garage as part of your envelope of the inside of the finished heated house. And the same thing with the sides. I'll measure from the wall interior to the house to the outside envelope, and then we'll just back that out of the entire envelope of the house. The standard gives another method of doing that. They only like it when it's, like I said, when it's within the vertical walls of the house. But for practical purposes, that's what we'll use, because it's realistic. And again, stop me and ask me any questions. I think all y'all's volume is on. Nobody's saying anything. Taking this all in, it's not hard. It's just tedious. Very tedious to do this and do it correctly. All right. Do you have any questions right now about finished and unfinished space? Anybody?
So finished, or what would be considered unfinished? Like if it has drywall and the drywall tape, is it considered finished or?
Oh, I turned you down there, Missy, and now I can't hear you.
Sorry. Well, so I was asking about what classifies it as unfinished. Like if it has drywall and tape and say a concrete floor, that's considered unfinished, correct?
I'm glad you brought up the concrete floor. Finished is finished. If it's drywall and tape, and there's no paint on the wall, it's not finished yet.
Okay. Okay.
Same as with the ceiling. The floor has to have a covering on it of some sort.
Okay.
And they're changing the standard now on concrete floors, because we're seeing those more and more. They're becoming more popular with finishes on the floor. Anything that is intended to be used as a finished concrete floor, except a bare concrete floor, is acceptable as finished. So if you do a, I'm not sure, smooth finish where they use the little, or the big machine where it finishes the floor very, very smooth, similar to what you do in your garage, where there's a decorative finish on it. Now they're including painted. If you painted the garage floor, not the garage floor, but a concrete floor, is now considered finished.
Wow. Okay. Excellent.
All walls, all flooring, and ceilings have to be finished in some manner.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Or down.
No, we don't want to do more on it.
Oh.
My air freshener.
Okay, are we good there? I'm glad you brought that up. The concrete floor was a change. And usually there are questions about them when they pop up, whether I'm measuring them or someone else. But any kind of finish on concrete floor that's intended to be finished, except a bare concrete floor, is considered a finish.
Okay. That's excellent information.
Absolutely. If getting back to, if we can't get to areas to measure, there are phrases in the standard that'll tell you how to disclose that. But most of us won't have to worry about that. We're usually doing this as a convenience for our clients, or even more than a convenience. It's really what we should be measuring every house, because if you think about it, what is the standard that appraisers use to give value to a house in general? It's dollars per square foot. And if we're selling houses now, an average house in the $130 to $150 a square foot range, how much does $100 or 100 square foot difference make in a house? $10,000 plus. So 60 feet of running space and 1 foot that is not measured correctly because they rounded the wrong direction in the PDA could easily be $10,000, and if it's 2-story, it'd be more than that. So that's why it's important both ways. Generally, when I measure a house, it's less than the PDA says it is, or it's less than the last realtor who sold it. I have a listing recently that was over 150 square feet smaller than what I sold to my buyers, who are now my sellers. Now, luckily, that didn't make any difference as far as their end dollar amount that they were expecting. But it could, 150 square feet at $130 a square foot. It's a lot of money. So we need to be accurate. Accurate is the most important thing, over than saying, well, this is what the last realtor had, or this is what the PVA had. And you'll see some listings, if you go through the history of where they were listed, every time it's listed, it's a different amount. And it's not because they've finished something new. It's because inaccuracies in either measuring or where they pulled their information. And I hate to say it, some will just go, it's bigger than 2,100. I'm gonna call it 2,175 and put their license at risk. That's fraud. If you have a source, know where the source was and have it in your paperwork. If you're going to use PVA and not measure, at least know that you pulled the PVA and your folks were fine with that. But I always like to measure. Generally, if I'm going to measure a house, it's 30 minutes. Now it takes an hour to get it all on paper, but 30 minutes at the house, it's pretty quick process to get it done. And usually that's only because it has a second floor that has odd shapes to it. Understand, and there's been discussion within LBAR about disclosing room sizes as a requirement. There are some associations that do that. When I was in Orlando, it was required that the main living area, the main bedroom, and the kitchen and the dining room were measured. And I had a little laser level. They're measured differently than an entire house. They'll be measured interior wall to interior wall. Or if you're measuring to the ANSI standard or the square footage of a house, a total house, it's outside envelope. So that's the brick, that's the vinyl, that's the stone, that's whatever, it's out there. So we've hit all that. All right. Good time to stop it for questions.
So they'll just contact.
Anyone? I know we haven't talked about actually being at the house yet. It's a lot easier to teach this class at a vacant house where we can walk around, but we're going to attempt to do it like we have it now.
Preston, with the below grade versus above grade, if any portion of the floor is below ground level, the whole level is then considered below grade, correct?
That is correct. Everybody get that?
No.
Your split foyers, for instance, a really good example, depending on the topography of the street and which side of the street they're on. Most of them, the lower level is below grade, but not all of it. Usually if they're a little higher than the street, the garage and the front entrance area may be below or maybe above grade, but the back will be below grade. But if any part of a level is below grade, the entire level is now below grade. So if it's 2 inches below grade, you can determine it's obvious that it's below grade. It's below grade. Now, when it's calculated into your square footage that goes onto MLS, if you input it correctly, it will total up your total square foot finished. So if you have 700 square feet on the first floor and 1,000 square feet on the 700 square feet in the basement, essentially on a split foyer, and 1,000 square feet on the main level, it's going to show your total finished square footage at 1,700 square feet. And that's what we're expecting. It's a 1,700 square feet finished, but you need to break those down into finished, conforming, finished, non-conforming, unfinished, and then also everything that's above grade and below grade. So that total should add up to between the finished and unfinished, conforming and non-conforming, above and below grade to get your total. But the main thing is that finished square footage. Okay, break it up into above grade and below grade, and you'll be compliant. Does that make sense? You don't look like it's making sense, Missy. Can't hear
It
you.
makes sense. No, it makes sense. I was just,
And it's okay. It's okay to
Yeah.
have below grade finished square footage. You want to find finished square footage. It's okay to have non-conforming square footage at 18 inches and that Cape Cod that's not 5 feet tall.
right.
It's okay because in the end, it's going to show you total finished square footage.
Mhm.
Whether it's any of those outside flyers, finished square footage is the expectation that we're gonna see.
Right, okay.
Okay. And if not, need to check, and especially with Flex, and I am not the best with Flex. I'm still working on it like everybody else. One listing, one buyer at a time, getting them all set up and navigating my way through it. I've taken the classes like everyone else, but I don't, and like everyone else, I just haven't had the time. I was doing it 4 years ago, but we weren't sure 4 years ago if we were gonna be using Flex today like we are. So, but make sure that you just split it up. Go ahead, Susie.
Is there anything besides the shorter ceilings that would make a finished space non-compliant?
Non-conforming. Shorter sides. If that ceiling is not 7 foot, then the whole space is non-conforming. It's still finished. And we have, especially like maybe over in the Meadows area, off Meadow Lane and around Castlewood, there are a lot of houses over there that have 6 foot ceilings. And what was really a finished attic, but it's still that story and a half, and then they finished it and it's usable. It just doesn't conform to the standard. If you look at it that way, it's not conforming to the standard, but it's still usable living space.
Does Flex have a spot that'll show you if it's conforming or non-conforming? Because I don't remember seeing that. I just remember seeing above, below grade, finished, and unfinished.
Pull down menus. There are pull down menus you'll need to use. And I wish I could point at them and tell you that's it, but again, I'm not the best in Flex. Look at Susie.
Thank you. Okay, gotcha.
Okay, are we good there? All right. Let me kind of tell you the process that I go through when I go to measure a house. If it's mine, or even if it's not mine, of course, somebody will call me. I think Susie, we just did one coming up. Which one is it? I lose track of time.
Got one coming up
Friday, probably, right?
whenever you're available.
Okay. I get the address, I get the particulars. You know, it's got on a lockbox, not on a lockbox. Is it vacant or occupied? Are they expecting me? And generally a time that I'm going to be there. So we get all that squared away. Then I arrive at the house. I've got both my measuring tapes with me because I try to be efficient, and I never have enough pockets, but I try. Generally, and do it the way you want to. This is just easier for me to handle. Take a piece of notebook paper and I'll fold it where I can write on it on my hand and make it legible to me, and do a basic diagram of the outside of the house. Now, if I pulled up the PVA base from the PVA site, it's helpful to do that. I can do that in advance. And I generally will take that piece of paper, print it out and fold it up so I have it with me on a piece of paper. And then on the back, I'll do my measurements. Separate them per floor, kind of understand before you go in as much as you can what you're going to be measuring. I try to measure the interior first where I have to, such as the second floor, any unfinished space. You kind of do that point of discovery. If someone's there, generally tell them I'm going to just kind of walk around. I need to see what's finished and unfinished, and I'll do measurements on those, and then I'll go outside and do the outside envelope, and in the garage, measure in there, if there is a garage. Just so I don't want to forget anything. If the main house is not connected to, say, a pool house or a finished apartment over a garage, anything that's not directly connected with finished space to finished space, such as a hallway or a staircase, if they're exterior or they're not finished connecting it to the other finished space, the secondary space is not included in your calculations. Now, I'm going to measure it. I'm going to put it in the remarks, but to the standard, it's not part of the main living area. Now, again, we're just looking at primarily single family, either attached or detached homes, condos, row houses, townhomes. That's what we're looking at. Although many condos that we'll see here in Lexington that we'll have to measure are basically apartments. And so it's a little more difficult there. We'll go over that here in just a minute. But anyway, if the homeowner's there, I'll just tell them, or the renter in some cases, I'm going to wander around. Is there anybody in any of the bedrooms? Is there anybody here sleeping? Anybody here? Is there a dog that's locked up somewhere? Please let me know, because you'll forget everything if there's a dog trying to nip at your ankles. Anyway, I generally try to start in the basement because I know I'm going to get at least the majority of the base on the outside of this basement. And I try to find out what I'm going to exclude. If there's nobody there, you have to go down there. Sometimes the homeowner will tell you there's partially finished or it's completely finished, and it's not. You always have utility areas, seems like in the basement. And again, it's the same criteria for the basement, just to make sure it's finished, floors, walls, and ceiling. It doesn't necessarily have to have a direct heat source. It just has to have the accessibility to heat. Say if you're in an older home, you may notice some places have those console heaters in the center of the house that heats the whole house. Just because there's a door doesn't mean you can't leave the door open. So we count those spaces as well. I've had several questions about those. Same as closets, counting as a bedroom. Closet has nothing to do with a bedroom. If you go into a house built in 1900, if it hasn't been updated, it will have no closets. It's still a house. It still has bedrooms. So anyway, let's see where we are. We have plenty of time. Okay. So go to the basement first. Make a square of the basement. I've got approximate measurements from the PDA. So I'm just going to fill in the blanks for the unfinished space is. And it's easy if it's entirely unfinished. But if it is finished, we do the same rules as if we were doing the garage. Say the utility room is in the center of the basement, which they generally are. We just measure the interior, if we can, of that space. If we can't, we measure the exterior and back off 4 inches on each wall to give us the unfinished space within that utility area. Sometimes they're in a corner, which makes it a little easier. Until you do several hundred of these, if you do a couple and do them correctly, you'll remember everything I'm telling you today, because there's not that much to it. There's only certain rules apply in certain situations. And so there's only a handful you have to remember. Well, once I finish the basement, I will also measure the stairs. If there is a basement and there are stairs, measure the width and the opening, not to the bottom of the stairs, but the opening, the stairwell itself. Generally, it's 6 to 8 feet, about 3 feet wide, but measure the interior and mark it down there, because it's going to be included in the basement, but it's not going to be included on the first floor. But if there's a second floor, it is going to be included on the first floor, but then it's not going to be included on the second floor, because remember, we go down the stairs, and when we go down, it's that floor that we count the square footage on. Then I'll make sure the first floor doesn't have any unfinished space. Again, utility areas, unfinished closets, pantries, you usually have finished walls and ceilings and floors, so they're part of your finished square footage as well. And then upstairs, and generally upstairs is the hardest thing you have to measure, because they're not always square with the base area, the first floor of the house. You can have dormers that you need to measure, and you have to extrapolate right, left, and depth from the base square of the house. You have slanted ceilings and bonus rooms. Just if you follow your 7-foot standard and your 5-foot standard there for height, you'll be okay in those rooms. And I'll go ahead and measure to the best of my ability those rooms. And then when I go outside, you can tell. If you can't tell, you can measure setbacks on the different rooms, on the different dormers. Generally, it's 1 foot or 2 feet setback. And then you can take the base measurement and work off that. It's a lot of extrapolation when you have a second floor, I'm just going to say. One of the first ones I ever measured was a huge house out in the country that had been added on and added on and added on, and they'd added dorm space basically over a garage that was connected by an unheated hallway. I was required to measure by the standard by the person I was working for at the time. So I had to figure all that out first time out. Hardest one I've ever done was the first one out. So this is not hard. It's just, like I said, it's tedious. It's tedious. Let me get back here to a couple of things I want to make sure we don't forget. On a condo, condos are owned drywall in, and the association owns the wall space. However, what we're going to do is measure and extrapolate to the midpoint of the wall, just like we would for a townhome. And you're going to guess, or you're going to measure the entire width, say of a townhome or of a condo as much as you can, and figure out whether that's a 4-inch space, a 6-inch space, 8-inch space, 12-inch space between those walls as best you can. And all you can do is best you can, because you can't see inside the walls. Generally, I count it as an 8-foot gap for a firewall, 8-inch, and add 4 inches onto the measurement of common walls for the townhome common wall and for condo common walls. You have questions about that? Anybody? Okay. You guys act like you understood this, so I'm going to move on. Let's see. Does everyone understand the measuring to the outside envelope? That it's the outside brick, the outside vinyl, the outside stone. That's the envelope of the building, and that's what we're measuring to, no matter how thick. And that really makes it easier for us to measure. Now, if you can't, like on a second floor, and you're trying to extrapolate this from the inside rather than the outside, if you have, say, vinyl siding on the exterior of the wall on the second floor you're trying to measure. If it's brick, you have to add up the total amount of baseboard, drywall, stud, sheathing, airspace, and the brick. But I've already done that for you. So you add 9 inches for brick from the interior baseboard at the floor level, which is where you're supposed to be measuring to. You add 9 inches to each exterior wall that you can't measure from the outside. If it's vinyl or any other siding, we'll do the same thing and we're going to call it 6 inches. So it's each exterior wall, right to left, you're going to add 6 inches to the right and 6 inches to the left in vinyl, to that total length of that room or that hallway, or that, a lot of times you have a hallway and a bedroom on the other end where you measure from one end of the house to the other. Okay, is that clear as mud? Everybody? Sorry, I'm toggling back and forth here with my notes and you guys. Okay. All right, something else we need to think about, laundry areas. It should be pretty easy to determine if they're finished or unfinished. A couple of exceptions. There are a lot of the older houses in the 50s and 60s, even in the 70s, where the laundry may still be on the main level, but it's technically in the garage. And Sometimes it's easy to tell and sometimes it is not. But if there's no heat source, no vent in the laundry and you have to access it from the garage, then it's unfinished. It's the same as part of the garage. But if there's a heat source of some type, or you can access it directly from the finished space of the interior, then it will be finished space. Okay, unless you guys say something, I don't know you have any questions.
So there, you can email us the link that has all these rules, right?
I can email you the PDF.
The ANSI website or whatever.
Yeah, I can email you the PDF, and it does have diagrams on it. I'm
Okay.
kind of reading between that and my notes.
Okay,
So you have diagrams about what I'm talking about here. You'll see that.
right, okay.
And again, because I've been doing this since 2003, I've had a lot of experience hitting almost all the things they talk about here. I had a listing over off of Russell Cave Road in the really what used to be the estate section over there on Dover Drive, and there was no laundry inside the house. The laundry was in the garage. It was closed off with walls. There was an auxiliary heat source out there. There was an electric heat source. And I'm guessing at some point back somewhere in the 60s, they moved the laundry from inside and made it a bathroom and put it on the outside in the garage. But it was not connected to the main house. So it was unfinished space or non-conforming space. Okay, and the easiest way to deal with those things is just to disclose it. Disclose it in the agent remarks, disclose it, generally not in the marketing remarks, but just disclose it. Same as if you had a bedroom in the basement that had no egress window, whatever it's used for, it's used as a bedroom, so it's still a bedroom in the basement. However, there is no egress in bedroom number 5 in the basement. And you just do it the same way. Laundry room is exterior of the main house in the garage, but it is enclosed, has a heat source. You just disclose it. Okay.
So I got probably a dumb question. So as a listing agent, you would be able to measure and all that, but then they always say buyer's agent to confirm. But as a buyer's agent, you get like 15 to 30 minutes to run through there with your client. How are you ever supposed to get an opportunity to measure it?
Well, a couple of ways.
Okay.
One, you call and make an appointment, say, my buyers would like me to measure your house.
Okay.
Make sure that we're consistent. Now, that being said, in this market today, once you've been in enough houses, and I know that's a little more difficult for you, Missy, and Catherine, that haven't been in as many houses, you can feel if the square footage is accurate or not. It's complete.
Okay.
The appraisal is going to confirm it.
Okay.
But they're marketing that as this many square feet.
Right.
So even though they say buyer to confirm, the buyer will confirm when they get the appraisal.
Okay. Okay.
Because the appraisal is going to be, because the bank is depending on that appraisal to be accurate.
Yes. Right. Okay.
So you will confirm then, but if you have any reservations about it, if it doesn't feel right, make an appointment, go over and measure.
Okay. That's great.
Either if you have time before your folks put an offer in, but if not, afterwards. And then if it's lower than what you were expecting, and again, give percentages. If you're 5% or more out, so 2,000 square feet, you're 100 square feet out, so it's smaller.
Mm-hmm.
You may want to renegotiate price.
Right. Yeah.
I would inform, if I were the buyer's agent and that happened, I would inform the seller's agent that my measurements and that I'm relatively confident are somewhat accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So the house to be 100 square feet smaller than what we're paying for here.
Right.
I'll let you know, but we'll confirm that with the appraisal. So when the appraisal comes in, we'll get the accurate measurements for that. But if it's difference is less than what I measured, I think we're okay. But, right now we're looking at 5% difference, and that's 5% difference in the price.
Yeah. Okay.
So if it's a $300,000 house, it's $15,000.
Wow.
Well, think about it, 5%. So that's what I would do in that particular instance. Generally, we don't. I think I've done it once, maybe twice, where it didn't feel like it was the correct measurement. And we had time. It was a different market, and I went in and measured. But all 3 times, it was just my perception was a little off, or the buyer's perception was a little off. But I measured it as close as I could, and generally, I'm less than 2% off from the appraiser.
Nice.
Well, do it enough. Not always, but do it enough. And you'll get better at it. But it's like anything else. It's like doing flex. It's practice. I would measure every house that you list. Every house you list. You're doing your folks a disservice if you don't. Because accuracy. You can never depend, and realtors are the worst about being lazy. I'm not saying all realtors, but there are enough percentage that are PVA. That's good enough. And sometimes I come in and measure it close enough to the PVA. I'll use the PVA's measurement because that's public record. So there's no questions. Unless they say, where'd you get your measurements? I say, well, I measured it. It was pretty close to that. So that's what we're going to use. But I always will measure it. Any other questions right now? Got a few more things and then we'll wrap it up. Okay. So I just want to make sure my notes I've adjusted them over the years doing this. All
Kristen,
right.
is this what you're going to be sending out, like the ANSI standards to practical measurement?
Yes. And now is that 2003, 2013 update or 2020 proposed?
This is 2003.
Yeah, I've got the 2020.
Okay.
Minor changes, very minor changes between 2003 and 2013. More minor changes to 2020. Generally, they get accepted because there are only a few. It also includes that painted concrete change. I'll send you any of them you want to, but that's the one I prefer to send to you because it has the standard plus a couple of little tweaks. And they tweak them because there are questions, and they try to make answers to those questions fit for everybody. So if you'll text me or email me, email me because that way I can pop it on an email and send it from my computer. But I've got the most current proposed standard. It may have been adopted by now. I just couldn't find where they have said it has been yet. It probably have not been because of the pandemic, but it's a really good standard to go by. The tweaks they did, as I said, answered some questions that we have coming up with new finishes and a few other little things.
Do you mind popping your email in the chat box?
Absolutely. Do it right now while you guys are asking more questions.
Preston Sales 1, the number 1 at Gmail, I think.
Nope.
No, I don't remember.
At Yahoo.
Well, go. There it goes. All right. Construction drawings. So this is one reason the PVA can be off, is that they only include the stud walls in their calculations. They don't do the sheathing or any of the exterior finishes. So that's one possible reason why it's off. Other reasons is there's no house that I've ever been in that's perfectly square, perfectly plumb, or that there weren't an adjustment made when they pour the foundation. When the foundation is poured, that sets the base of the house, no matter what it says on the plan, and everybody else just builds to that as long as it's close enough. And it doesn't account for any changes that were made after the drawings were submitted. Those aren't always turned in to the permit office. So as with anything else, as I'm sitting here looking at my notes, when in doubt, disclose. Now, something else about a garage, you'll find some guys that have finished their garages into man caves or partially man caves, they have to meet the standard. If you've got a 2-car garage that has not been insulated and the garage door disabled, if it's a double garage door, it's not going to meet the standard. If you have double doors or a single door for the man cave and the exterior walls have been insulated in some fashion, and there's a heat source, and the floor has been finished, disclose. But I would count it. I would count it and disclose it if it's finished like it is a room. But most of these finished garages are not insulated, at least that one wall. The garage door may still be operational if you plug it back in. And they use it 6 months out of the year or better. Not finished, not a finished room. But again, I've seen them with the exterior garage door still there, and it looks like a garage, but interior, it's got an insulated wall, and they put the drywall off the other walls or added studded walls to them and added insulation and finished the floor, and it's heated space, and it's done, but still disclosed if it looks like a garage. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, I think we have covered everything except actually going out. Now, that being said, if you want to learn more about measuring a house and you have a listing and you're going to help me, I will do one of your listings for you for free. Normally I charge 75 bucks, and it's just by the end of the year, I can go to Key West and back. So it's extra money for me when I do it. There were some agents here in the office that aren't here anymore. When I just charged a flat fee, they call me out to measure a 1-level rectangular house with no garage and complained about my fee. It would take them 5 minutes to measure the house. So I didn't feel bad about charging them 75 bucks to take an hour out of my time to go over there and measure. I've measured other houses. I probably should have charged 3 times as much, but I'm not going to do it because I'm not doing it as a side gig. I'm just doing it because it's a service to the office, and it's tedious. People don't want to do it. I'm okay with that. So, but I will go out to one of your listings and measure. If you want to learn how to do it, I'll supervise you while you're doing it. And we'll sit down, we'll come to the office or wherever and sit down and do it on the graph paper. And if it's wrong, we'll go back out and measure it again. But we'll try to catch anything that's wrong while we're out there. I have had to go back a couple of times because I didn't take pictures of the exterior. And there was a measurement I missed because the dog was barking behind me and scared me, or the owner came out, or the listing agent came out and wanted to chat with me for a minute. I didn't write down a measurement that I should have. Or the owner was helping me. That's the worst. The owner wants to come down and hold the tape for you. That is the absolute worst. Because they'll be talking with you about real estate, and all you want to do is measure and write down numbers in the correct space. So, but anybody that wants to that's taking the class, I will be glad to do it. Now, just for reference, does everyone here know about the Spaceship House in Lexington?
Mm-hmm.
Susie does, Catherine doesn't?
Yeah.
On Mount Tabor Road, off of Richmond Road in Lexington, in the 70s, there's a corner lot it's small, and you really couldn't put much of a house on it. And this builder he kind of got mad because they wouldn't let him build what he wanted. So he built a 6-sided house. And it's odd and it's very inefficient in shape. But the last time it was listed, it was in our office, and I went out and we measured that sucker. While we were out there, we had to had to look up how to get the area of a hexagon. And all the sides aren't the same length. And there are insets for doors and stuff on a couple of sides. So anyway, we measured that, and we were within 3 feet of what the PVA had.
Wow.
So, but we were out there for an hour and a half and it's freezing cold. But I got to go inside that house, and most people haven't been inside that house that are curious about it. It's nothing to write home about. It's very inefficiently made, and it's a duplex actually right now, up and down duplex.
It's 2-story, right? Or is it 3-story?
No, it's 2-story, 2-story. So separate inches.
Yeah, I just had to look up the picture because that just sounds interesting. I was picturing it more nicer.
No,
Wow.
very small, very inefficient. There's no garage because he had no room for it. And actually, there's only a gravel driveway, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, he kind of thumbed his nose at the building department downtown and the setbacks and all the stuff, planning and zoning, and built that house. I remember it when it was going up because I'm a lifelong Lexington just about, but yeah, but odd. But we got to measure that, and that's probably it wasn't the most difficult, but it was the oddest thing I've ever had to measure. So, any other questions? I'm always available if you guys want to give me a phone call or a text and ask me questions about this or about anything else. Misty called me back yesterday, and I had to interrupt her because I was at the landscaper's place, and she finally had time for me. So, but she knows. You know, if I don't answer the phone, Will call you back and just let me know who it was.
You always answer the phone. I can't say you've always answered the phone.
Logan will not confirm that. Logan Cheeks, who I'm also mentoring. It's almost always I'm doing something like, Logan, give me 5 minutes. I'll just put the phone down and call him right back. But any questions about measuring, but residential measuring, I say it's tedious, just tedious. But you owe it to your clients to at least attempt it or have somebody do it. And at some point, somebody will be in trouble because they didn't. We haven't seen it because realtors will get on Facebook and complain about it, but they sure won't turn you in for the most part. Although that anonymous button to report a violation gets used sometimes in my office. Only if they're nasty about it.
I'll be measuring my house this afternoon now. I'm curious.
All right, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. It's just a rectangle, so it should be all right.
But check it against PVA, then see.
Right. Yeah.
All right, if there's no more questions, then we're good. And
Actually, we just bought our house in September, and they have it listed as 2,300 square feet, but the basement is actually a painted concrete floor. So were they technically allowed to count that as finished since the plan's only proposed, or?
The reason I referenced and pulled up the 2020 standard is because of those minor changes, and that's one of the minor changes that they have approved,
Okay.
or had proposed rather, maybe not approved yet, but it was considered finished when they painted it. Did you consider it finished?
Yeah,
So
I
it's
did.
finished.
I mean, they did a really good job with it, so.
Again, even like the floors, you go into a lot of box stores now, they've put that coating on top of it so that the floor doesn't get damaged.
I've seen
That's a
some
finished
really
floor.
nice polished concrete floors, like
Polished
in
concrete.
the main living area. It looks really good.
Polished, but it needs to have some finish on it.
Okay.
But most people do because you still get that powdering even when you polish it. They'll put some kind of sealer on it, something that makes it a layer between the bare concrete and the floor. David O'Neill, who's our PDA here in Fayette County, he has polished concrete floors in his family home. He's redone over the last several years. Watched him on Facebook have it done. So,
Wow.
but yes, if you're happy with it and it is well painted and well done, and so it's finished. Okay.
Thank you so much, Preston.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm a little disorganized doing this, but there's always, we have different questions and different things. I've done this out at houses before, and we didn't really get finished because there were a lot more questions as we're standing there at one particular house. But the next time, hopefully, when I teach it, we'll have the opportunity to go out to someone's vacant listing and have class, so it's a little more practical.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all, and if you have no more questions, have a good one, Susie. I'll see you in the next couple of days.
Thank you.
Thanks, Preston.
Thank you. My pleasure.